All right, welcome everyone to weekly sync number 3 for TCL-76. How was this week for you all in terms of this week's issues? Not really. All right, I'll pass it over to Nathan, who will deal with this week's demos.
Yeah. Um, does anybody want to demo first?
Yeah, I think Sarah and I can go first.
Cool. Do you need a refresher on like the format or feel like you got it?
Sure, yeah, just a little refresher would be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, so usually the best thing to do is to demo the feature in the application itself first, just so people have an idea of what has actually been built, and then dive into the code. If you do the code first, usually it's like, yep, sure enough, that's code. I don't know what it does, So given that context of like, here's what it actually built is a good way to start if you want to do that.
Sure, that sounds good. Um, okay, yeah. I'll go ahead and start off then. I'll share my screen and we'll start off with the demo. So give me a second here. So, okay, so here's the screen here. As you can see, I was doing a lot of testing as well, made a bunch of test lists. So I'm pretty sure there'll be a way to delete that. But yeah, so our issue was being able to create a new list and then having it redirect to the list page. So first I'll go over if there's an error with creating the list, because if you add a few spaces here just by itself or an empty string, you should get an error, right? When you hit submit. And so here you see an empty field. So that error works if you go ahead and create an actual list. Let's just call this 131. And I can also hit enter here. I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard and not submit. So I'll hit enter. It redirects us to the list page. And then we're also given this little alert that the list was saved to the database. And then you can also confirm that by checking in your local storage because it's saved in local storage here. And you can see it gives you the key, the ID, and then it'll give you the name of the list that you enter. So it was tester 131. Um, and that is actually it for the features we needed to add it. That would be all. So, if Sarah, if you want to go over the code, that would be fine.
Cool.
So let me stop sharing.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, so like Marco said, our goal was to have a way for users to input a new list name that they wanted to have, a new list, and be able to type in the name that they would want. So the first thing that we did was have a form. So we have a little label here for showing here's the list name, and that's what we're typing up. We set a new state for tracking the list name that they create, that we use on change here to set that state. We have a button that we can click to submit, or we can also enter, like Marco said. And then we have a paragraph here for the error that shows up if the field is empty. So that's it for the form, and it goes to the handle submit here. Do you want to talk about that, Marcos, or should I just keep going?
Oh, you can go ahead. That's fine.
Okay, so we made a handle submit function. We made it asynchronous so we could have this try catch here. We took away all the default settings that comes with the browser. We used create list as issue wanted us to do because that's where the functionality to getting saved to the database comes here, and then it's saved to this result, which then we passed into a set list path that allowed us to get it saved to local storage. And Marcos will talk about a little bit what he did with that. Then here gets navigated to list. And if there's an error, it will be passed into the console log or that message that we saw earlier. And something that we added recently was, in order for that alert to show up a little bit later, we put a set timeout here so that it wouldn't show up on the home page. Yeah. Oh, and this account that this holds for the little error that we had of empty strings and having just spaces. So we used the trim method here, and then this gets passed into the message. Yeah, that's it. You go ahead and just talk about the part that you did, Marcos, about that.
Yeah, I think let's see here.
Or you can share if you'd like.
No, it's okay. Or yeah, I might have to share. Because one of the difficulties that we had, let me go ahead and share my screen. So I'll share the code here. So when we were trying to console log this create list with all these values, we were getting undefined. And so we weren't getting anything at all. We're just getting undefined. So we weren't able to save it to local storage since we were getting undefined. And so I just went ahead and looked at what create list was doing. And so here in our Firebase.js file is our entire function for create list. And then I noticed at the bottom that it wasn't actually returning anything. And so that's the reason why we were getting undefined. And then also looking up in some documentation here, I'll show you guys from Firebase. I don't know if can you guys see that or not?
Yeah.
Here in documentation for Firebase, basically what it is it's a document reference, and where we get .path from is here. So it's a string representing the path of the reference document, so relative to the root of the database. So if we log this here, so we call list.ref.path. If we return that, that's going to give us the full path of the list. And so once we did that, we were able to see it in local storage and it wasn't undefined anymore. And so that was our fix for that. But yeah, it took us a little while, honestly, because we really didn't have any idea why we were getting undefined. And we kind of thought it had to do with maybe the code we were writing in here. I didn't really have an idea about checking what this function was actually doing. So, after a while, it took a little while, but it was a pretty good learning lesson, to always kind of check everything that's going on, including all the functions that are being handled and everything like that. So, yeah, and then I'll let Sarah talk about our little function here that we kind of just worked on as well. That was a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, so yeah, we ran into that a little bit with the set timeout. I talked a little bit about this, but the issue was brought up in our reviews that we maybe should be known for users to see that their message was submitted or their list was submitted, and we wanted it to be after that they were after the navigate to list, but the way that since things are asynchronous and everything is the way everything moves around, this alert kept showing up before the navigate before you get on a navigated to list page. So we needed to add this set timeout, and that took a little bit to just search up and figure out. But yeah, that was it. And then we made it 100 seconds. That was a good 1 millisecond, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it would be just the perfect time where it's after navigated to list page. That was it for that, though.
Yep. So, that was pretty much the issue covered for the week, though.
Very cool. It is in milliseconds, by the way, so it's 100 milliseconds. So 1,000 would be a second.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's a really like clever because I see where you're coming from there, right? Like it does it on the one page. I deal with this. I was dealing with this recently at work where I was trying to console log something because I wasn't sure what value I was getting,
Mhm.
but there was a redirect. And so I would like see the console log for like 1/10 of a second, and then it would redirect to a new page and the console would clear. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, totally that's a clever way to handle that. Yeah,
Sweet.
this looks really good, guys. I love that you used trim up there too. I was thinking that when you were talking about the like empty space string working, I was like, oh yeah, I think that trim should do that. But I wasn't sure if you guys had landed on that specific method or not. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a good solution. Yeah. Anybody have thoughts, questions? Looks like
Good
we're
find
good.
with the create list. That was good. I can't tell you how many times there's been bugs caused by failing to return a particular value. That is a common occurrence. So well done.
It
Good.
yeah. Yeah, life advice as a dev, start with the like most obvious possible thing that you could have missed. Like the
Right.
number of times that the issue is. Sometimes I'm like, oh wow, that's an incredibly complex thing that I finally figured out. 9 times out of 10, I'm like, no, that was very small and I just completely missed it. Um, yeah, nice catch on that. Um, but yeah, if we don't have any other questions or thoughts on that, we can jump over and Emma, I guess you'll be presenting on behalf of both of you.
Good morning. So since Allison is out of town, so I will be presenting our feature. Can you hear me? Okay. So the feature will be allowing the user to add item to the shopping list. For example, add show my and then select how often you want to add this item, and then you can submit to the database. It will show an alert message mentioning about the item name that has been added to the list. And after you hit the OK button, the form will be cleared. And if we check our database, on the most recent shopping list, I just added Shawmai to the document. So this is a whole overflow of our feature. About the code for the front end, to allow to catch the user's input, we created a form. So that form basically has two inputs. One is for catching the name. The other is allow option to allow the user choose three different choices, different frequencies. One thing that require us further consideration is about the value. Since in the end, we need to pass a number to the add item function, we decided to go with 7, 14, 13, 30, because that would be easier to convert the string to number type. When the user click on the submit button, it will trigger this event. I didn't choose async await and try catch. I end up with .done and .catch chaining method because it's private. Provide a better readability with a sequential code, I think. So once it has been successfully submitted to the backend, it will show the alert message and then clear the form. If there is any mistake, we'll also show another alert message and console log the error for the two. That will be easier to debug. And that will be the front end. For the back end, the only one function that we need to update, which is the add atom function. Previously on the first pull request, we totally overlook this method, this function, because we were unable to locate the first parameter, which is the list path. And then I find that it's a custom React hook that we can locate by using the local storage.get atom to find which path, which list path we are adding the atom to. So that will give us the correct one that we need to add the atom to the shopping list. And going back to the add atom function, we first changed the console log to the set.doc method that this is provided from the Firebase. But it was giving us some error. The error was mentioned is about setdoc expecting a document type, but the one that we're passing to first was a list collection reference type. So I go over the documentations. There was one method that can convert or give us the return a document reference, which I can use right here. And also the second parameter will be the ID. I just go for with the item name. That will be the ID. Will show up in the. This will be the ID, the item name. There is also another options to instead of setDoc, there's another function called addDoc. The difference will be the addDoc will automatically generate ID for us, but this will require the user to provide an ID, and it will be overwritten. So I think that's the difference of those two things. I decided to go for a setDoc. I think for a shopping list, it won't be making sense to have two like beef or something. So I think this will be a better options. And I think that's it with front end and back end code.
Awesome. Yeah, this is great. And yeah, using the item name as an ID makes sense because an ID obviously needs to be unique. But like you said, it doesn't make any sense to add the same item multiple times to a list. So they are unique. Awesome. I think it looks really good. Anyone have thoughts or questions? Nada? Cool. Well, great work, everyone. And I think that probably wraps demos, yeah.
And one thing, I guess, Emma's rocking the solo demoing last couple of weeks. Well done.
Twice in a week, yeah.
Twice.
Twice in a row.
Yeah, not bad. By the way, I had no
Thanks,
idea
Emma.
what shumai was, and so I Googled it while you were presenting, and that looks fantastic. I'm a horrible cook, so I'm not going to attempt it, but I might try to find somewhere in town that has it.
It's a very delicious shopping list. All right, so I think we have this learning module this week. I'm going to present. So let me just jump over, share my screen. All right, so this week's learning module is on accessibility. And I will admit that being a part of the Collab Lab has opened my eyes a whole lot with respect to accessibility. The biggest thing I was introduced to originally was just like, add an alt tag to your image, but there's a whole world of things involved with actually making your applications accessible. So accessibility, the what, why, and how. All right, so you may see this abbreviation, just A11Y, just because there are 11 characters between the A and the Y. So if you see A11Y, just know that that's the abbreviation for accessibility. on the web. All right, so just a loose definition here from Wikipedia, which is that web accessibility is the inclusive practice of ensuring that there are no barriers that prevent interaction with or access to websites on the World Wide Web by people with physical disabilities, situational disabilities, and socioeconomic restrictions on bandwidth speed. When sites are correctly designed, developed, and edited, generally all users will have equal access to the information and functionality. And the W3C group, they maintain a working group dedicated to web accessibility, and they publish related standards. So in the US, Section 508 requires government agencies to make websites accessible to people with disabilities. Why? So I think I feel like in the last few years, it's become a bigger thing in terms of it. One, it is the right thing to do, just because so many people now rely on the web, especially in a post-COVID world, just for work, play, communication, essential life tasks, right? Having web access now is more of a utility than a luxury as it was, 20 or 30 years ago. So everyone should have access to the web or be able to access the web with dignity. Depending on your region, you may be legally obligated to make your website accessible. And with respect to the US, most people in the US access websites with assisted technology than in Canada. Some estimate that 20% of website visitors have some sort of disability. And lastly, making our pages more accessible for people with disabilities makes them more accessible for everyone. And you could think of pages would be one thing, but pages could also extend to things like applications or products. So think about your user base when building as well, because who would you want to be able to access your product? And the answer is, as many people as we want, or as many people as we can. This is actually one of my favorite slides in this whole presentation, where I didn't even think about how disability could be presented. And they could be permanent, which is what most people think of. It could be temporary. There could be situational. So in the case of touch, person could be born without limbs, maybe have an injury to an arm where they not able to use both hands at the same time to interact with an application. Likewise, for a new parent who has to hold a baby, or may just have one free limb in order to interact with your application. In terms of sight, again, we think of people who might be permanently blind, but then you could also have people with reduced vision in the case of cataract. So maybe a distracted driver. Person who probably shouldn't be using applications, but there may be cases where it may be, maybe like an Uber driver or something like that. It may be applicable there. In terms of hearing, again, you could have people who are permanently deaf, or temporary situations where there's an ear infection, for example, or someone in a loud environment where relying on audible cues may not be the most applicable thing for that situation. And then lastly, speech for, again, users who are nonverbal, who may have some kind of temporary condition, or people with a heavy accent. So that might be me, depending on how I speak. All right. And the how. So basically, we want to follow some of the simple best practices. This is usually the biggest argument for using valid semantic HTML. Like I mentioned, the main thing I was always aware of was alt attributes on the image tags. We want to use ARIA attributes if necessary. I think the nice thing about the HTML spec is that it's updated, or has been updated over time, so that you will find elements that are best suited for specific situations now. So it's always a good idea to reference, resources like MDN to see, if a semantic tag exists for what you have to do. You want to ensure that all content is reachable via keyboard, especially for those of us who don't like to use, mice or touchpads anymore. Ensure that all interactive elements have reasonably sized targets. Ensure that content and tab ordering makes sense. Use sufficient color contrast. This is actually a big one that most people don't think about. Simply referring to things like the contrast between your background colors and your foreground text. Is that contrast sufficient to allow good readability of it? extending on that, you could think about things like font size. Is the font size actually readable? And even things like the font face, because I think recently, maybe within the last 6 months or so, there was a font that was recently released that was designed with accessibility in mind, and we decided to try it out on the Collab Lab website in terms of, if it is more readable, we could try it out, seeing as we are very pro accessibility at the Collab Lab. So think about the fonts as well in terms of what your users will see. And don't use only color to signify state, just because you may have users who may be colorblind. So, whereas red may indicate danger or an alert to somebody who's colorblind, that means absolutely nothing. So bear in mind some of these things, that we want to cater for the widest possible group, and just bear in mind that not everyone perceives things the same way that we do. Just also wanted to mention this one because we had a Kalabi who had issues with this. Things like motion could also affect users. So the way animations are set up, some people just can't tolerate motion on our web page or animations because it will induce something like motion sickness for them, and it makes a web page or application unusable for them. That's why you may see on some sites the option to turn animations off. All right. What is ARIA? So ARIA, you may have seen this thrown around, which stands for Accessible Rich Internet Applications. It's a technical specification by W3C, so the same people who write the HTML spec. And you can add ARIA to your HTML to have better control over it. But at the same time, you don't want to misuse ARIA. So misusing ARIA could actually introduce problems for specific users. Try to use, again, semantic HTML to the best of your ability, and add ARIA if you really can't find an element that corresponds to what you're trying to do. So consider an element that you've probably seen, toggle switch. HTML has no concept of a switch, but you could use ARIA to make one using something like a button element. And the attributes role and ARIA check will work together to tell users that there is a switch called Wi-Fi and that it is on. And we could still use, or we'll probably will still need to use some CSS and JavaScript to make it look and function like a switch. All right, when not to use ARIA. So again, ARIA has some overlap with HTML. And I mean, we all know that we could technically make a div look and behave like a button. But because there actually is a specific element to use or that describes a button, it's always preferable that you use that, because the browser will bundle certain styles and certain behaviors with that specific element. And then it will also allow users to click the button with space and enter keys as well. So always use the correct HTML once you can. All right, and how do we identify accessibility issues for remediation? So there are automated tools that you could use, such as Axe, which only finds about 30% of the issues. I personally have never used Axe. What I would have messed around would have been things like the accessibility insights that are part of the browser. You could run your Lighthouse score in Chrome, which does some basic assessment of accessibilities, but it's not very comprehensive, I would say. You could test directly using assistive technologies such as screen readers and Windows high contrast mode. So I think Windows, I don't know about Mac, but I know Windows does have some built-in screen reader for it. And then you could have audits done by accessibility tester companies such as Fable Labs. And then lastly, probably the realist form feedback would be that from users who actually have disabilities and are using your application. All right, so demo time. We just want to jump over here to show your website, or two websites, I would say, where we're just going to look at something very simple like tab order. This is in Firefox. I don't know if Chrome has a built-in way to do this without an extension, but if you inspect the accessibility properties, you could actually show the tabbing order here. All right. And here it may look a bit off, but number one is actually up here. Two is over here, and then three. All right, and then we go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What do you all think about the tab order here? Does it look chaotic? Or does it make sense? Does it follow any logical flow? Collabis?
Is 3 to the heading there, the recipe dashboard part?
Yeah, 3 is here.
I guess I would say it's really organized, but I guess it's skipping that top part is the only thing I'm noticing. I don't know if that's a
So
good thing or
here
not.
is 3. What is 3? 3 might just be a header. Oh, flex good data. Yeah. So this actually is a website where the tab order is correct. It does follow a logical order for the most part. And then it goes through each card from top to bottom and then goes left to right through each one. So this is an example of a good website.
I don't know.
On the other side of that, sorry?
I would assume you'd want to see so like it goes from 4 is the edit button and then 5 is the name of it, or like it skips it. You don't know what your name is of anything there.
Yeah.
So like it needs to tell you, I don't know. I would assume it would. I guess it's cook chocolate cake. What is the difference? I don't know what the difference between edit and cook is.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a reference site. But I guess I go from interactive element because this is a button to another button.
Oh, I guess you would want to edit before you actually cook. No, that's probably right. Okay.
Yeah. But you can still like tab through to get to it in a logical order.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Okay.
Compared to this one, which it's kind of like the complete opposite of it. So take your time and see if you could find any logical order in this one. I'll hit tab first to see. So I think 1 is over here. 2, 3, 4. And then don't know where 5 is.
This is new to me. I actually didn't know that you could do the tap order thing so easily.
Yeah. And this actually, there's actually a link to both of these websites in the presentation, so you could mess around with these afterwards. But yeah, try to keep things in some kind of logical sequence. Oh, here is 5. No, is it? Still have no idea where 5 is.
Yeah, the last time I mentioned they did not have this. I find this interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's pretty much it for this presentation on accessibility. Obviously, this is very much just the surface of it because there is so much. And I think like the last few years, I keep seeing like a greater push towards accessibility. If you want to become an accessibility expert, great. But the take home is just bear these things in mind as you're building and designing your applications. All right. And Manny, I'll pass over to you for this week's issues.
Excellent. It is my turn. All right. Okay, so before we actually get into that part, I wanted to check in with our board here. Is it up to date? And if not, what do I need to move where?
I think number 5 is at peer review or mentor review process. Yeah, of mentor review. Sarah and Mark already did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ours is also at mentor review. We just had a recent push.
Okay. What about this one?
That's an old one, I think. Marcos, that's yours and Allison's.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure
that should have
everybody
been merged.
Yeah, everybody reviewed that one, I believe. It should have been merged.
Okay, so this feels accurate.
Yeah.
Okay. And then as far as mentor reviews go, so we had an initial review, I believe, but we're just waiting for a follow-up. Is that accurate for both of them? Cool. Okay. hopefully we'll get that done here and get those marched in by the end of today. Good deal. All right. Thank you for that. So moving into next week's, we have two basic functionalities that we're going to be adding. We want to be able to add others to an existing shopping list. So Marcos, if you had one and you wanted to invite Sarah, you could send her an invitation. Or could add her to the list so that she could see it on her side. I don't know if you actually sent an invitation. I don't remember. We'll find out. I don't think you do. And then the other one is that when you're looking at a shopping list, you want to be able to filter down via text to find the items that you want. So those are the two functionalities that we're going to be implementing. Oh, and actually, before we get too far into that, let's take a look at what our pairings are and who has what. Okay, so Marcus and Emma, you have number 6. And Allison and Sarah, you have number 7. Do you make sure we pay attention to both of these though? And actually that brings a question. How are you all testing the AC? What is your process for testing to make sure that the other team has completed their AC?
What is AC?
Oh, acceptance criteria. Sorry, thank you for correcting my jargon.
I think my process is for what I did with Emma and Allison's was went through their steps of how it should go and then checking off the acceptance criteria afterwards and seeing if it matches up with that. Yeah, if that makes sense. So starting off with the directions and then checking one by one.
Cool. So you're pulling it down and checking.
Mm-hmm.
That similar to other folks? Yeah. Are y'all looking into Firestore as you do it as well, or?
Yeah, I put on Marco and Sarah's branch and created some shopping list and check out my Firestore database and seeing all the names matched with my input.
Nice. Good. Yeah, I just recommend to make sure you check that step. It's easy to like have something wonky happening in Firestore, and so like just wanting to make sure that you both see what it is that they did and understand what it is that they did while they're implementing things is really good. Okay, so in this case, this is going to be another change that you're going to see in Firestore, Firebase. I always forget which one it is, Firebase, I guess. You're going to see these changes there as well. So basically, the user is going to enter an existing user's email. So you'll have to make sure you grab whatever folks are using from Firebase. And so they'll enter that user's email into a form, and there's a function already created called shared list or share list. And that function is called in the submission of the form. So here's your acceptance criteria. You should have a form, should have a label that has a semantic label. Again, it's that both the mouse and the enter key, so you should make sure you use that. And if the other user exists and it was shared successfully, you should see a notification that it was shared successfully. If it does not, then the user is shown an error message that explains whatever problem it is. So you should see in here, it's not actually listed as an acceptance criteria. But you should be seeing like now I'm second guessing that actually as I'm speaking. I would assume you should see that in the database that it says that that list has been shared with you. There's not another issue, right, Devin?
I'm not 100% sure because I think like we kind of back on the old track. Like these issues should be more in line with how they were before.
Right. Maybe we should add that AC.
Yeah.
What do you?
Yep.
Cool. let's even show y'all what it would look like. So on a particular user, this is how we initially started each of these off, right? So we have a set of shared lists, and this is the list that was shared with Allison. So we would expect to see additional entries into this array of the reference type here for each list that's been shared. I'm going to go ahead and add that wherever this was. Users document,
Good.
users collection.
Yeah, well, under shared lists.
Right. Cool. Okay, any questions on this one before we move on? And number 7, let's see here. Want to be able to filter the shopping list to make it easier to locate an item in the list. So you're going to add a form to the top of the list view above the shopping list. And there are a couple elements here. Should have a text field with the semantic label, which narrows down the list as the user types. So you're typing in an A, it's automatically going to filter that to anything that has an A in it. When there's text in the field, some kind of button, like an X, exists to clear that field. And then when the field is cleared, the list is reset to its unfiltered state. Any questions on that one? All right. Well, in that case, look at that. We're like done 15 minutes early.
I just wanted to add a couple of things to what you were speaking about regarding to testing. When you're testing code, pull it on your computer, run it, try to poke at it and see if you can break it, right? Because we know what it should do, but what you also want to look at would be how does it handle edge cases? How does it handle a bad user? So that's why I did things like try to submit an empty list or an empty item, no name, just to see what would happen to it. So when you're testing yours and even your peers' codes, try to approach it in the same way, and see if you could break it. I mean, you're not going to be malicious to be like, haha, this is not. But just be thorough in your testing. Just remember when you approve code, if you're set to review code and you have to approve code, you're basically responsible for that code getting merged to main. And if you merge bad or broken code, there could be some problems there. So just be mindful of that and just be thorough in your testing as well, as best you could. That's why we have multiple people checking it at different points in time, so you have extra coverage in that sense. Yeah.
Is anybody here do TikTok? Nothing?
Watch a lot.
I tried to set up, but when I put in my birthday, it was like, sorry, you're above the age allowed for TikTok. So no such luck.
You must be older than my mom then. There's a trend right now that's going on in TikTok where there's this woman who's like very mindful, very demure, very like yeah, there we go. So when Devin just said mindful, that was the first thing that popped into my head. And it actually popped up earlier this week too with the see what I'm doing there with the commits, the conventional commits. And that's the phrasing. Sarah, I love it. I see how I do this. Very mindful, very demure. It is a trend. So I wanted to share.
Do we have a mindful tag for conventional comments? Mindfulness, colon.
Anyway, there we go.
All right, everyone. Good luck with this week's issues, and we'll see you all in Slack. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.